Actually, I lied. All of these hoes, and I still chose you, were all that I want, and I still want you. Oh, I can't believe that I'm tripping on you, because that's what I promised I was never going to do. All of these hoes, and I still chose you. My name's Harley Neville. Welcome along to the Guy and Harley podcast.
And my name's Guy Pigden. And you're not... That's not an allusion to anyone in your life. This is not a subliminal message to someone special.
To a special hoe, to one of my special hoes out there. Well, I'll let all the hoes out there decide. Okay. I'll let them all the hoes, all of my hoes can think it's about them. So that's how I operate. Yeah. So we're back. We're out of. I was in isolation. I started off going to Japan, and before going to Japan, they requested that I sort of isolate and stay away from people a little bit before I go, in order to stay healthy. Now, and then so I sort of didn't really have to isolate. I was in New Zealand, but then I got on a plane and I did 14 days worth of isolation in Japan. And then there was 3 days there where I got sort of freedom, but Japan was in a state of emergency because of the COVID situation over there. So even though I had some freedom and I did go and explore Tokyo a little bit, I couldn't really, truly get out and get amongst it and, really enjoy it. I was still somewhat removed. And a lot of Japan, I experienced Japan through a window. And so then after that, I went back to New Zealand and I did 2 full weeks of complete isolation, never being within more than 2 meters away from a person. And then finally, I get out of isolation into a level 4 New Zealand lockdown. And now here I am, still in isolation, essentially.
So, for the internet archaeologists out there, New Zealand has just entered its second only ever, no, that's not true, its third level 4 lockdown, I believe. So this one's a bad one. The Delta variant has arrived on our shores, and it had to be a bloody Aussie that brought it in, didn't it?
All of the shittest things in New Zealand come from Australia. If you think about it, Guy Pigden.
I was born in Australia.
but we must never speak about that.
I'm a Kiwi through and through, mate. Through and through.
No, you are. I think of you as a Kiwi. And then also the Christchurch shooter, New Zealand's worst terrorist attack, was inflicted upon us by an Australian. So, and now the Delta variant, the dreaded Delta variant that's taking the world by storm, is now upon our pristine shores. And it came here on the back of an Australian, or it might have actually been a Kiwi who was returning from Australia. But the semantics. We don't need specifics. It doesn't matter.
The point is, it was bought from Australia. That's the issue.
Yes.
So we're on level 4 lockdown. So obviously everyone around the world knows what a lockdown is because they've all been part of one or many, depending on where they live.
Yeah.
And for us, it's all about containment. So total elimination. So that's what we're talking about. So we've essentially lived this idyllic lifestyle in New Zealand with the odd lockdown here and there. But overall, if you live in New Zealand, it's a beautiful thing. You can hug and kiss and shake hands and go to concerts and watch sporting events and all that sort of...
Go to gangbangs.
Everything you always did before COVID, you could still do. And why is that? Because we have totally eliminated the virus. People come in, they quarantine. When they are virus-free, they're let out into the world. And for just over a year, that has worked very successfully. And we have enjoyed, many liberties that no other country has. And we have also been criticized for this potential way of doing it, because, you know, while it's great for those in New Zealand, it becomes very problematic if you're trying to get back into New Zealand, or if you wish to travel somewhere for a period of time and then return to New Zealand. Our borders are closed, or if they're not, you have to play this roulette with these MIQ facilities, these isolation facilities, and you have to hope that eventually you book a slot. It's like the lottery, apparently. You know, unless you're like someone like you that's come from the Olympics, it's all done for you. You're a
All expenses
prestigious
paid.
media personality, and so it is. And they say it's only for the MIQ is only for the rich and prestigious. So that's you.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't have
That's
any
me.
issues with your. It was all done for you. They needed to send you halfway across the world to sit in a trailer halfway across the world and put graphics up on a screen, and to send you all the way back, send you to one of these facilities, occupy one of the rooms there. They couldn't figure out how to do it remotely. They couldn't hire anyone there to do it. They couldn't subcontract out. The only way was to fly a team all the way over there to sit in the same trailer and come back. They hadn't figured out the internet over there. No internet existed in Japan, so they couldn't use high-speed internet or anything. Would it have been possible?
No.
Had to be there in a trailer, quarantined, on an island.
They needed the artist himself. The artist formerly known as Harley, now known as Graphics. Prince Graphics.
Now known as Graphics One. Graphics One. Go to Graphics One, please. Graphics One going live now.
I think actually I was often referred to as 2D. So to clarify for the listeners at home, what it was I was actually doing in Japan is they flew me over there. They put me in a truck, a special truck. It's called an OB, which is it stands for Outside Broadcast. It's a big multi-million-dollar truck filled with, you know, the latest fancy equipment, and I sit in there, and it's very similar to sitting in a normal control room, a normal television control room. I sit there and I listen to the director, and the director he'll be like, and cut camera 1, cut camera 2, you know, all this other stuff, and then he'll go and key the graphics, or in my case it was and key 2. He'd sometimes say key 2D, because there was 2D graphics and 3D graphics, and my graphics were the 2D graphics. I'm a 2D graphics specialist.
Your graphics were simpler and more rudimentary.
Well, absolutely, than the 3D ones. So if you watch the sailing, you'll see that they have all these like 3D graphics that kind of zoom in on the boats and do all this stuff, and it looks like a video game. That's the 3D graphics. And then after the race or something like that, there might be a person who stands there talking and looking at the camera, and you'll see their name appear at the bottom of the screen. That's the 2D graphic. That's the one I'm doing. So I typed that up, and they couldn't possibly do that from there. They had to fly in the artist himself, Harley Neville. So yes, that's what I was doing. I sat in that truck and did that. Tyler on the live stream.
Visual effects creator. Yeah.
Tyler, the visual effects creator, who is not quite a good enough graphics creator to be flown to Japan. He's not really at the same caliber as me.
Not in 2D.
He's not to the same level.
Well, actually, he does both, but he's not on the same level as you when it comes to 2D graphics, which does make me question why I never went to you to do all these visual effects that need doing when you're so good.
Well, mate, you're constantly underestimating me. That's the thing. So that's the thing. You know, the big difference is that I work for money. Tyler's still a volunteer. He's just volunteering for you. He's getting some work experience.
Sometimes he works for money, but it's normally very
Pigville
little.
work experience.
Yes, well, that's a great question, Tyler. There are no.
Well, you haven't read the question yet.
The question is, any skits in the works featuring Harley? The Frankenstein one was brilliant.
Yeah, it had that Pigville, that little Pigville flavor, that little bit of Pigville spice that made it stand out?
Well, the short answer is maybe. I did actually request him for another role. He was too busy. He wasn't interested. Didn't have time.
I was interested, but as a busy and in-demand world-class actor, I was not available at the drop of a hat, unfortunately. So I couldn't make it. You had to run for the second best thing, which was Richard Lambeth.
Go with
Richard
friend
Lambeth,
of the show, Richard,
also a listener,
otherwise known as Right Wing Richard.
Yeah, also known as the poor man's Harley Neville. The poor man's Harley Neville, right wing Richard, whatever you want, really.
Shout out to Richard.
So he was in it, and what skit was that again? What was that?
Lifetime, mate. That was I fell in love with a Snyder zombie, and the basic premise, which was, as it turned out, far too inside and niche for anyone to give a fuck about, but. You live and learn, is that essentially you'd fallen in love with a zombie, you were in a relationship with a zombie, and then you discover that she's not just any zombie, she's a Snyder zombie. And if we know anything about Snyder zombies, it's that they're fucking stupid, and they should not exist. And that is essentially the conclusion that was come to within the skit. So that was basically the premise, but the answer is there will definitely be some in the future. Well, I'm actually I'm turning over an idea in my head previous to Tyler's conversation about I'm 20% too quiet. I'll turn myself up 20% then.
Good feedback. That's exactly the kind of feedback that we need. Who said
Tyler's,
that? I see. It took a while to come through to me. That's exactly the type of feedback we need. So if you're ever on the live stream and something is wrong, you've got to let us know, because we don't have a technical producer. We don't have a technical producer to keep an eye on that shit.
I could pretty much turn myself up exactly 20%, and that now I'm maxed out. So, so I appreciate that one. So yeah, the answer is quite possibly. Now that we're in lockdown.
Well, not just lockdown, but we are under the same roof. Yeah. We're back in the same roof. I'm right now. We are doing this via Skype, and that might seem a little weird, because I think Guy is about 6 meters away from me right now. He's 6 to 8 meters away from me right now, and we're doing this episode via Skype. With a wall between us, but I've got my flat, he's got his flat, I've got my wing of the mansion, he's got his wing of the mansion, and we're doing it this way to keep our bubbles separated, because we're in level 4 lockdown, and well, you were a little bit worried about that you had the plague, so but we'll get to that. We'll work our way to that.
I was concerned that my girlfriend had COVID, which I had potentially given her when I had COVID.
Yeah.
Now the reality is, neither of those things are very likely. It's more likely that we both got the same cold, but it's just around this time. So we're not. So they obviously, I haven't got a test yet because there's been a lot of queuing up. But you went to get a test. You're the safest person.
Yeah, took
you're
10
the
minutes.
safest person, but that has not been the case at all. Most people have been queuing up to get tests, and they've been taking 6 to 9 hours. There's been people queue up for 4 hours.
6.
And then people were like, at the 4 hour mark, someone would come by the car and go, look, you may as well turn back, because we're not going to get to you today. And that happened to a bunch of my friends. And I was like, well, fuck that shit. I got things to do, man. Me, though, I just Harley Nevilled it through there. Just wandered in today. Took about 20 minutes. This is a good wait time. Was that the one on Dominion Road down the end?
Yep. It was not very far, and it was pretty quiet.
That's the last one I got tested at. So
pretty easy.
I'll maybe venture down there when I can be bothered. But
yes, I am the
safest person in New Zealand, because you've had your vaccination, you've been tested 3 times.
I've been tested 11 times.
There you go. In the last 6 weeks.
6 weeks or 5.5 weeks. 5 to 6 weeks. I've been tested
So
11
unequivocally,
times.
we can say that Harley probably does not have COVID.
No. But you never know. And you just got to do another test just in case. Oh, I walked past that person. I better go do another test. I walked past somebody on the street and they didn't have a mask on. I'm going for a test.
Which is funny because it does come to a story that we experienced today. So when you're in lockdown on level 4 in New Zealand, you can't, all those liberties that you had, all those freedoms are taken away from you, and you have to stay at home. That's the whole point. Because also, Harley, you mentioned this in a previous thing. You go, all we need to do to get rid of the virus is stay at home for 6 weeks. But everyone has to stay at home. It can't just be like
the whole world.
The whole world, like, literally just has to sit at home for 6 weeks and ride it out.
The entire economy we can save billions of dollars, millions of lives. The entire world we can go back to our old pre-COVID life.
Have to do.
We can do it. All we have to do is stay at home, probably for 3 weeks, actually. I said 6 weeks, but 3 weeks would be fine. That's all we got to do. I'm glad to see that really stuck with you, guys.
Well, it just stuck.
Because you've mentioned
that. It stuck with me because, well, it is common sense in that how do you stop the virus from spreading? You stop spreading it.
Yeah.
And then what happens to the virus?
Because the virus doesn't move, the humans do.
The virus goes away because it hasn't been spreading. You know, that's the only way it continues on, because ultimately the virus either kills you or you get better from it. So there's, it can't just hang about. Past the point, it'll be in your system. You'll get rid of it, you'll beat it, or it will beat you. One of those two things, the end. So essentially, New Zealand has listened to this podcast, Harley Neville. New Zealand has been listening, and New Zealand appreciates you, and New Zealand has taken up your advice, and it's almost like you had Jacinda's ear, Auntie Cindy, Jacinda Ardern, our Prime Minister's ear, when you said, I mean, you have mentioned
that we are
multiple times.
I do have a history with Jacinda.
An illicit affair.
The photos are on
you had
Facebook.
An illicit affair with Jacinda Ardern, and
no, well, remember, I came clean. I came clean. My affair wasn't with Jacinda in the end. I do know Jacinda. I do have photos with her, but it was Judith Collins. It was Judith Collins that I've been having a torrid affair with.
Enemy.
Yeah.
Her sworn enemy.
I've been having to clarify, it's a sexual relationship with Judith Collins.
So I would encourage anyone who doesn't know who Judith Collins is to look up Judith Collins New Zealand.
Porn. Judith Collins porn.
New Zealand to see what Harley's hitting. But at the end of the day, the whole of New Zealand, the New Zealand government was listening to this podcast, and they're like, Harley's right. So we're going to do another lockdown, and we're going to achieve exactly what he said. And so that's what we're currently doing. And the lockdown has been going for just over a week now, a week and a bit. And it has now been extended a bit more, and it's going to keep being extended for a while longer, because at the moment, the virus is running rampant, as in it keeps more people every day, and more, because essentially we didn't discover patient zero. We didn't really discover patient zero until 3 days after patient zero had been spreading Delta everywhere. So we got on top of it as quick as we could, but a lot of the damage had been done. And Harley, of course, we did mention this off air, but it all comes back to religion, doesn't it?
Well, it does. Religion poisons everything. Religion is the root of all evil. Religion will make good people do bad things,
this case,
such as spread the freaking virus. Like there was the Assembly of God, I think it was called that. There was a church. So one of our main clusters, one of our main clusters of virus, our biggest cluster is from somebody that went to church and spread it amongst the other sheeple. And
this was in a sort of environment of like 300 people. People were singing and breathing on each other and clapping.
They're all praising. It is crazy that in this and not just this time, but last time as well. Issue. It was their faith that ultimately came back to haunt them. And it's like, why So because last time there was another big religion related cluster, and it's like, why has the Lord forsaken his chosen people? And they will say, well, it's all just a test, and it's just a test. That's why all the religious people are getting this virus. And it's like, no, God's not real, and you guys are getting all together in the same room and spreading a virus. That's why you're getting the virus.
It is scientific. It's not a test.
It's not a test. It's just pretty
It's the
simple
spread- it's the
simple
spread
simple
of
maths.
germs.
Yeah, you're all getting it together. If there was no religion, we would probably still spread the virus
Yes.
in other ways, because the truth is that the problem with atheism, they say atheism is like
There's a
herding
lot of
cats.
problems with atheism, but yeah, go on.
And when I say problem, the big problem is that we don't have a replacement for church. So religious people can all get together once a week and reaffirm their faith, and that's good for them, and it's good for their belief. Whereas atheism, we don't get together once a week and go, hey, have you heard that God's not real? Hey, he's still not real. I was just saying, Guy, that atheism doesn't have a version of church where once a week you can get together and reaffirm your faith or lack of faith.
Reaffirm
like
your
with religion.
disbelief.
Yeah, you go, hey, did you know that God's still not real? Praise, it's so good that God is not real. We don't do that. And this is why atheism as an ideology finds it difficult to compete with religion, because religion has this community aspect. And that's what religious people really like, if you ask me, is the community aspect. They get together once a week.
Also,
you've got friends. These are good people, and they're all associated with your belief, and they all believe the same thing as you, and you're all in the same tribe. Whereas so that's what you really love.
I think the real issue too is religion offers a lot more perks as well,
Well, do you mean like for your immortal soul?
Yes.
As opposed to it's a more pleasing ideology.
Not in the short term necessarily when you're not allowed to masturbate, but in the long term.
I'm going straight to hell.
In the long term, when you're laid to rest, and because we all have because we're all heading that way, that is a very comforting thing to have tucked in your back pocket, and atheism doesn't really compete with that offering.
Well,
heaven,
I don't know. I feel like there's something to. I feel like there's a certain amount of relief associated with eternal nothingness.
That's your argument. I think it's the shittest argument I've ever heard, but yes.
No, I think there is. I mean, like eternal nothingness. At least there's nothing to worry about.
No, there
right?
is.
I mean, like, do you honestly,
that is what there is to worry about.
No, but not once you're dead. Once you're dead, I mean, like being dead is going to be very much
not
like
existing
before you were born. Exactly. So after you're dead is the same as before you were born. And I personally don't have a problem.
But if you like existing, we've lost you.
Yeah, which I do.
Then that not existing thing is going to be a big problem. Not for you exactly. But just the thought of it. So we've lost Harley on the stream. So
don't talk about it too much, or I'll have to edit it out of the audio podcast.
I'm
bringing it back.
I don't want to scare anyone with. It almost looks like divine intervention from God, and you've ascended.
Yeah, they're like God is like that's
to the blue Skype zone.
I'm canceling this motherfucker. I'm canceling this motherfucker. I'm canceling this guy.
So I'm drinking a beer because I have definitely resorted to drinking in lockdown, and
good.
And we can't see it on the screen, but this is from Baylands Brewery, and it's a hazy pale ale, and it's titled "How Low Can You Go?" And I've developed a theory about all these craft beers because I went to the supermarket and I was looking to buy some beers, and now I'm quite particular, and we can see that on the live stream now. How low can you go, right? and I've developed this theory about these craft beers, right? So craft beers are between like a third and twice as much as regular beer at the soupy, right? And I was like, and the argument being, they're craft beers. They take special brewing, the craft of it, the specialness, the ingredients, the extra hops, whatever the fuck it is, right? That's why the craft beers are so expensive. You're paying for quality. Well, I think all of that is total bullshit. I think the reason that these craft beers are so much more expensive is because every fucking one has an individual different label, right? So they have to spend, when they're making these 2 cans, double what they would normally have to spend, because they got to, if you mass print like lager, right? You mass print this label, that's a lot cheaper than having 6 different labels you have to print within a box of beer. And so they're spending all their fucking money on these trendy fucking logos and graphic design artists and the printing shop that prints the cans, and we're paying out the ass for it. It's conspiracy.
But
Conspiracy.
Are you saying that you bought? Are you saying that you bought a 6-pack of beer, and they're all the same beer? They're all the exact same lager, but they've given you 6 different cans. No. So if you go and buy, let's use for example Spates,
the worst beer in the world.
Pride of the South, best drop in New Zealand, Spates. If you talk about Spates, if you get the Spates ale, that all is printed the same. But so is that. If you buy the lager of that hippie, of that fancy one that you've got, but if you go and buy the Spates Old Dark, it's printed differently, exactly the same as that.
But
so you're talking about different types of beer from the same brand.
But no, because also this is much harder to print than a shitty generic logo. Like if you've seen most recently what's going on the graphics of both the cans and the bottles and the actual, the cardboard thing, they're these very elaborate things, and I can tell you from printmaking and printing t-shirts that is much more expensive to create multicolored prints of things than it is to create just a white and blue or a brown and something or 3-color sort of something. And so to me, this is a conspiracy. We're paying these craft beers we're just paying for the logos, the pretty logos, and they keep making them fancier because we keep going, ooh, this one looks good. It doesn't look good because just because of the fucking fancy shit on it.
But you don't think it tastes any better?
Yeah, it tastes a little bit better.
Oh, it tastes way better. It tastes much better.
It tastes a lot better.
You can taste the extra hops.
There is a difference in the quality. You can really taste but I think that's also that's the placebo effect. Because really, I've seen the logo. Yeah. That's how I know it tastes better, because I've seen this fancy graphics on the front of the can. That's how I know. Yeah. And so now my taste buds are reacting accordingly. Conspiracy. I've uncovered a conspiracy, Harley, just like you and the invisible hand.
It's the invisible hand job. I believe you're referring to the invisible hand job. If a person, so obviously the theory there, right, is that if anybody, that we all live in a big system which is designed to perpetuate itself. This is the system, right? And so we all work in these jobs and pay taxes and all that type of thing so that we can live in this big system. And so if you have a job, a normal 9-to-5 type job where you work for some company and pay your taxes and all that type of thing. Now, this system is called the invisible hand. Your father, esteemed philosopher, said that
conspiracy theorist, as in, he's not a theorist. He a conspiracy
debunker.
Well, someone who studies and analyzes conspiracy theories and the concepts behind conspiracy theories.
Yes, and he agreed, and he said this thing is called the invisible hand. Yeah. Right? That's the name of this particular type of system, because there's different systems that control our societies. This one is called the invisible hand. And if you work in one of these jobs, you have what's known as an invisible hand job. And but back to your skit. You said you've got a skit idea been percolating that that you might do, because I thought that, you know, because we got distracted by COVID, but we started with that you said there was maybe an upcoming skit idea, and we're both living under the same roof, and now we're in lockdown, so we're more likely to create stuff, and that segues nicely. I don't know if you have anything more to say about that, but even if you don't, that segues nicely into Tyler Adams's question: how's the studio setup coming along? Pigville under one roof with maybe a green screen, so we could put green screens behind us right now and look like we were in the same place, or black magic chroma keys as well, probably. But also, before we address that, I also wanted to shout out to Will Fleming. Shout out Will Fleming on the podcast, on the live stream, who's tuning in right now. He says that God works in mysterious ways. No. So he does. We're like shutting down my camera. So shout out to Will Fleming. He's a good man, that Will Fleming. You should go check out his podcast. He's got so many podcasts that I don't actually know what his latest podcast is called.
Called Please Blow My Mind. And
right.
That's where
go check out Please Blow My Mind.
Notable people about mind expanding things for you. So very good podcast, highly recommended it. He did used to and we appeared on this. He did used to have a podcast called My Kiwi Life.
Yes.
And he had a very catchy jingle.
He also had a daily vlog. He did a daily vlog for like a whole year or something like that.
About 180 days, or he got a considerable way through, and then he got sick, and it was just very hard for him to update and maintain.
I was on 1 or 2 episodes of that, and I was also on My Kiwi Life, but I have not been on Please Blow My Mind yet. But I am keen.
I have
keen.
Been.
Well,
so priorities.
Yeah.
VIP status.
Yeah. Well, we did talk about it, but then it didn't happen. But so he talked to me first about it.
I believe what happened,
first,
and I can fill you in on this. I'll jog your memory. Is that he was like, hey, you want to come on the podcast? And you're like, yeah, sweet. What's the questions, mate? Give me an outline. And he was like, well, it's not really that sort of kind of podcast. We just kind of sit and have a conversation. And you go, look, that doesn't work, because we all know that fucking improv doesn't exist.
Improv
it's not a real thing.
Up.
No one can do it. I can't do it. So if you don't give me the questions right now, I can't be on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, I do. I always look. Here's the thing, right? With you and me, there can be a certain amount of off the cuff
improv.
No, because
that doesn't exist.
What do you think I'll have you know, Guy, that improv doesn't exist. Do you think the invisible hand job just came to me right now, live on the show? Of course it didn't. Of course it didn't. That's in my notes. It's right here. The invisible hand job.
Yeah.
Right?
Could you hold those notes up to the camera?
Well, they're on the digital, on the obviously. So I'd have to hold up the whole
screen.
Share
the screen.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
you couldn't
exactly.
take it.
So, and but no, I didn't make that up. I did make that up. The invisible hand job. I didn't improv it. So what I like to do is I like to have an idea of like the questions beforehand, so that I can have a good think about what I'm going to say, because it doesn't have to be word for word. It doesn't have to be rehearsed or anything like that. But I want to know what I'm going to be talking about, because I have had a couple of times where I remember I went on a show and they didn't. Exactly. They didn't send me the questions beforehand. And then they were like, and I was like, cool, man. So I remember this happened to one. I was like, can you send me the questions beforehand? They're like, oh, there's no questions, man. It's all good. And then they go, hey, man, hello, welcome to the show. Here's a question. And I was like, okay, I haven't really thought about that at all. And now you expect me to think about this now live in front of everybody on the camera. Okay. And so I didn't really, I'm sure I said something relatively witty and entertaining, but it wasn't, to the high standard that I hold myself to. And so I couldn't, I prefer to have some idea of what I'm going to be talking about, because I don't want to look like a fucking asshole. especially on a popular and
Yeah, I
successful
mean,
podcast such as Please Blow My
some
Mind.
people do like to have a sort of a free form, free flowing conversation where the topics vary and go all over the place with no predetermined
Yeah,
questions. And I believe that's
yeah,
what Will was maybe looking for.
yeah, yeah. Well, but that's fine. But it'll be a better show, and this is the main thing. This is what it really came down to: is we want the same thing, which is a good show. And it's like it's going to be a
Mm.
better show with me personally if I have an idea of what we're talking about instead of just being like, hey, so what's the meaning of life? And it's like, oh, okay, I haven't really had a good think about that yet. You know, you see,
Well,
you see, you see.
I
But
do
Will,
see,
I'm keen,
but
mate. Get me in.
people would probably potentially disagree with that.
Well, there's a lot of wrong people
Yeah,
in this world, guy.
and
There's a lot of
improv
wrong
doesn't
people.
exist.
Look. Improv doesn't exist in the way that you think it does. We've been through this. I've already smacked you down on this
Yeah, I
podcast
mean
in the episode
yeah.
explaining because
The
here's
listenership
here's
of
what
the
we're talking about.
podcast did have many rebuttals to those comments, and we're
They
infuriated
absolutely
by your stance.
absolutely
Yeah.
did not. They did
Yes.
not. They did not. And so basically, we have to now explain this again
Oh
because
God, we do
basically
not have to
what I'm
explain.
saying.
No,
Well, we
we
have to
don't.
because you're making
I'm
outrageous
not making
claims. You're
outrageous
making outrageous claims.
I'm
So
not making any.
so these are called
Oh God.
so okay in freestyle rap.
Oof.
So Guy is of the belief that when Eminem does a freestyle rap, he's just
No.
making it up off the
And
top of his brain.
I
But
clarified
Eminem
that.
is not doing that. No,
Yes, I
you
did.
didn't. And so Eminem is not doing that. Eminem is using what are called building blocks. And these are types where basically you think up all your rhymes beforehand. And improv and freestyle rap are, very, very interchangeable. And so what Eminem does is he writes he uses these building blocks. He writes these building blocks beforehand and then he connects them. So he walks into a room one day and he goes, that lamp is red in his head. And then he goes, red rhymes with head. And then he writes a little rhyme. And then next day he walks into a room and somebody's there and they go, hey man, do a rap. And he looks around and there's a red thing. And he goes, man, that's so red, just like my head, which is full of rage, and that's a building block which he has written and stored away just for later. He's just stored that away for later. But he didn't just make up that's red just like my head in my head
Harley,
right then. That was something he had thought of
we
beforehand.
fucking understand
And then
that
he
concept,
recollected it.
but
Well,
but
evidently you
also,
don't because that is what
yeah, but
improv
no,
is, right?
it's
And
not, it's
so
not
improv
everyone
is
taking
taking
from
these
building
and combining
blocks and
them
combining
in
them all
different
together.
ways.
No, that's not what improv is, right? Some freestyle rappers use building blocks, while other freestyle rappers don't. Just like some improvisers use building blocks, and some it literally makes no sense because even in this conversation that maybe you and I have had, things have popped into your head that are not building blocks that you have said to me. That is improvisation. That is not built on anything that you pre-thought of. It simply occurred to you in the moment.
I'm not saying that you can't have thoughts that
That's
occur in the moment. No, not good improvisation though. You don't just, it's not all that. It's mostly the bits in between are the bits that you're improvising to connect these blocks that you put together. So if you want to do something, if you want to look smart on camera, you've got to have a think beforehand about what you're going to say, and then most of it is improv. But of course, you slip in these little, quotes or whatever it is that you've thought of beforehand, and you build and you connect them all together. Now the bits in between are your improv, but the witty bits are not in between. The witty bits are what you've had to think about beforehand, and then the improv is, you might get lucky and like say something witty by mistake, but probably you're actually reusing an old joke or reusing something you've thought of before or whatever.
Maybe some people are just better at doing that than others. And
well,
so
definitely some people
they don't.
People
they
who
don't
have practiced
need their
a lot
building blocks because
are better at it.
organically,
So
they're the type of person that quickly thinks of jokes in the moment that are not building blocks.
absolutely, some people will have an advantage over that. But for
you
example,
specifically,
a
as who we're
person
talking about, is not a
Okay.
natural improvisationist is really what your
Well,
argument boils down to. And therefore,
no,
no one else can be a great one. They've all got building blocks.
no. If you look at like whose line is it anyway? They're not making that shit up as they go. The famous improv show. That's called, that's just theater sports. What they're doing is theater sports. And what they do is all day, every day, or whenever, once a week or once a day, or they do their training. And so they're training just like you at the gym. And they're doing their training, which is training themselves to think quickly of these things. And then when it comes showtime, they can improvise and think of all these things. Sure. But they've been training for that. If they had not done their training, they could not do that, because improv is a fucking made up thing. It's a thing that they've done beforehand, and now they're just piecing together the different things that they've already worked on and trained. So if you take, your wittiest friend who's never done improv training and put them on Whose Line Is It Anyway, they would suck. But if you give them some training and then put them on Whose Line Is It Anyway, they would suddenly be way better at improv. Why? Because they've trained to do that improv and thought about a bunch of things and jokes beforehand, and ways of connecting things beforehand.
I'm sure that is certainly true of many people. I would also absolutely argue that some people are just very good at doing that without having training, because that is just the way they form connections in their brain, which is not the same as you fucking Harley Neville, and therefore it is possible to do exactly that without all that training. And there is no right or wrong way.
Those people have still trained. You and I trained in high school. You and I trained to be smartasses. We trained to be witty smartasses, and that didn't mean actual training. That just meant thinking about jokes and being smartasses to each other for fun, and then eventually that made us good at it, and seemingly good at improv, good enough at improv that we can sit here and do a 2 to 3 hour show once a week. But really, it's our extensive training that the listeners are listening to.
It's not really. I mean, that's your life experience building to a point where you do things organically. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's called training.
But that's not training. But
yes,
because I didn't sit down and go, cool, I'm going to improv school now. But
that was part of my argument last time, was that it's not official training. It's like just some people want to be witty smartasses, and then they think about jokes and stuff. You don't have to train.
One of your distinctions is
with people
that someone who doesn't do that can't be as good as someone that has that. And
no, because I don't think has that is a real thing. You think has that is a real thing.
That's fucking ludicrous.
I'm saying it's ludicrous that you can't grasp
this concept.
The concept
is that everyone has building blocks that they build upon to make jokes, right? But you're saying on the one hand, building blocks is they've actually thought of it beforehand. And then on the other hand, you're saying the building blocks is they're just life experience.
No, I'm saying that the building blocks are the things they've thought of beforehand, and then the life experience is what helps them improv in between to connect these things. But that and so yeah, that's it. Like the improv part of it is their general life experience, their general training that they've had over the years of having conversations with people. But none of them are just magically like extra witty people.
You're literally disregarding the idea of an idea popping into your head.
No, I'm not, because I'm not saying that doesn't happen at all. I'm saying that nobody can sit there and go, I'm going to have witty ideas for the duration of this show right now, and I'm just going to make them up, and they're not going to be based off any of my previous experiences or jokes or training or anything like that. I'm just going to sit here and be funny for 2 hours.
Well, every single thing you do is based off your past experiences. That doesn't mean that's not the same as building blocks.
And some people want to have be witty and funny or whatever, so they use those they curate those past experiences. They try to do witty and funny things and fail and all that type of thing, and then it becomes easier for them. and other people just remain boring and don't do that stuff. And those are the people that you say are bad at improv or
Thank
whatever.
you, Tyler. Is this a clip show? I've seen this segment before. Fucking hell.
Yeah.
And we've lost Will
welcome to the
because
show.
he can't be bothered listening to
the
this
show
shit.
No, Will missed out on. Will tuned out, and then he came back halfway through, and then he went away again.
And Tyler, the other creator, says, "I've turned down guests I've asked to come on my podcast when they ask for questions. That's not how mine works. It's a casual convo podcast."
Yeah. Well, that's fine. But if you were to, for example, try to get like some big star, they might say, okay, mate, sure, I'll come onto your show and talk about literally anything. Or they might go, okay, my PR person's going to be in touch with you. What are we going to be talking about? I would like to know the questions beforehand. And that's reasonably common in showbiz. It's not like it's unheard of.
Podcasts, that is not how it's done.
Well, actually, virtually all of the podcasts I've been on, I've had the questions beforehand, and you don't have to stick to the questions. You don't have to be like, this is only what we're talking about, and I'm just going to read this out. But like, I don't want to get on there and they go, hey, so tell us what you think about something that I don't want to talk about, or something that I don't know anything about, and I don't want to look like a fucking dickhead.
That just means that you're never ever going to be on the Mark Maron podcast, so that's fine. Also, Joe Rogan probably has no time for you.
Who's this bum? I never fucking heard of him.
You've never heard of the two biggest podcasters in the fucking world. That's great. That's cool. That's fine. You only interviewed Barack Obama, but you know, who cares?
No.
Loser.
Do you really think that Barack Obama did not know the questions beforehand? And of course, Joe Rogan thought of the questions beforehand.
Joe Rogan
sent them to
Barack Obama. That
people.
Was Mark Maron, and I believe the whole point of the podcast is exactly that. Is that he specifically goes,
yes,
Mr. President?
It's the improv illusion again. It's the improv illusion again, mate.
Oh my God. It's insane.
Spot the guy who doesn't work in showbiz.
Spot the most ignorant person to things outside of his fucking bubble.
No,
Jesus Christ.
No, honestly.
So Barack, it was all scripted.
And
have you listened to that podcast?
No, not
of
scripted.
Course you haven't.
It's not scripted. It's not scripted, but he knows the topics. He knows what they're going to talk about.
That's the whole fucking point.
He knows what. Okay, listen. I don't know if that specific niche podcast is about
that niche podcast. Yeah, that tiny podcast.
But like, I almost guarantee that Barack Obama was, aware of the questions beforehand. They had looked at it. They go, oh yeah, no, we're willing to talk about this. This is stuff we're open to talking about. And then it doesn't mean like they stick exactly to that. It means that that's the skeleton of it. And then you branch out into things, and then the guest themselves can guide it back to things they want to talk about.
Disregarding something that is considered a cornerstone of the conversational podcast market, Harley, which is literally the opposite of that. Like, as in, we want to go away from all of that. We don't want you to think up answers beforehand. We don't want you to be witty or funny or be on or be in the zone of or where you're comfortable. We want to move all the way away from that and actually just have a real honest conversation. And whatever comes out of your head comes out of your head.
Great. And why would a person agree to do that? Why would a person?
Because it's interesting.
I'm Barack Obama, and I'm going to get up here and I'm going to say something, potentially wrong.
Maybe you hope that you rely on your own sort of your own and sort of internal barometer and intelligence to steer you to be able to answer the questions in a intelligent way.
But sometimes, especially someone like Barack Obama, every word is really scrutinized.
He has to moderate himself as he answers the questions that are unscripted. But if he's appearing on a podcast...
what happens is they send him the questions beforehand, and he goes, oh yeah, I know about that. And then
you haven't listened to the fucking podcast.
He thinks about this stuff.
He thinks about this podcast. I have. And you're telling me...
Yeah, but
you don't even know who this guy is. And you're telling me...
Barack Obama, he's the former president of the United States.
I'm talking about Mark Maron. This makes no sense.
I know.
Absolutely not.
It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. Barack Obama received the questions beforehand.
Or he
And then
didn't.
there's
That
some,
would also
what
make
you
perfect
call- it-
sense.
No, he received the questions beforehand. And then in between, and that's the skeleton.
There is
and
no
then built
skeleton.
around that is that's the skeleton. And then what built around that is what you would call improv and what I would call years of media training. And that is what that's what you listen to. So
No.
you listen to Barack Obama using his years of media training and his knowledge of the topics they're going to be talking about to then provide to you what you believed was an off the cuff made up show. And this is all made up. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have an
That's
actual
exactly
casual
what happened.
conversation. No,
But yeah, they had
but
it.
yeah, and maybe Barack Obama decided to do that despite the viral risk of saying
Sure.
one word wrong and being,
That was probably
lynched
part
for
of the
it.
appeal of doing it. So,
Mm,
like,
maybe.
this is a perspectives
In
thing.
his
But like
case,
to you,
it's okay.
you hate this idea. We've lost you again. Thank God. To you hate this idea of being unprepared and not being able to answer something articulately the way you want to. You personally, your personality does not like this in your life. You don't like that. Other people's personalities like that challenge. They are engaged by that idea. They go, fuck, that's a challenge that I take up. Okay, I've got to be present, totally present in the moment, not referring to my building blocks, not referring to anything, listening to you, asking me a question, and me relying on my own mental resources to answer that question with all my media training and everything else, and it not be some script that we're reading off. And that's literally what they like. And that is literally what people like about listening to these podcasts.
Yeah, well, I'm not denying, Guy, that masochists exist, right? And every now and then there are people out there who want to punish themselves. But I feel like actually you're really buying into the illusion that showbiz is
This
putting
isn't
out there.
showbiz. This podcast is out of someone's garage where he started being not having any sort of thing except wanting to have conversations with the people that he looked up to, that were his friends or peers, and looking for himself for something to do. And it organically grew from that as podcasting and these conversational, unscripted podcasts that everyone enjoys listening to more, well, not more, but a lot of people enjoy listening to because of their unscripted, unrefined, off-the-cuff nature.
Well, I'm not saying there's not outliers to every rule, mate. I'm saying that the people on these. I'm not saying that there's not outliers to these rules. I'm saying that, generally speaking, people are not really making that much stuff up. They're mostly building it off their building blocks and their training, and that, for me personally, that works for me.
Yeah.
And so that's why I always like to get the questions before I go on a show, because I've had too many situations where it wasn't a bad show. It's not like I got up there and was like, hey, by the way, have you heard about those racial slur? Or anything like that. It's more like I just get up there and I'm like, cool, well, that was a waste of time because I'm not going to share that show because I didn't really say anything very interesting because you didn't really let me know what we were talking about. And then I showed up and then we talked some boring shit. I said a bunch of boring shit and slightly misrepresented what I actually meant. And now that's immortalized on the internet. And now people on the internet are going to go referring back to this. Oh, that Harley thinks this about that, because Harley said this one time about that. And that's it. That's it forever now. And that's the thing. The stakes have changed with the internet. The stakes are much higher nowadays. You go out on the internet and you say one thing wrong once, well, that's it, mate. You're fucked. And so personally for me, I like the questions beforehand.
To answer Tyler's question, how is the studio going? The answer is I've been spending a significant amount of my spare time creating the studio. The studio is ready. I actually have a YouTube video in the making where we will see the studio in its full glory. One of the next couple of podcasts will probably be done from the podcast section of the studio. And the green screen, I'm just waiting for the government to come in and help me out with a little payment for this lockdown, and then I will be purchasing a large green screen that pulls down to cover one wall, and that green screen will be something that I'm hoping Tyler, the visual effects creator, comes through and maybe chucks in some backgrounds or some Blender animations so we can utilize a little bit of that technology potentially in some of these skits. So the answer is the studio is 99% ready. I've just got to install some sound panels. And also, if you're wondering what that drilling is behind me, it's not sound panels. It's someone whizzing up some soup. Yeah, but it's
good old New Zealand government.
Yeah, the government will come through and help me get that green screen, and I appreciate them for it, and I'm very grateful because that green screen is hopefully going to open up some interesting possibilities. So yeah, in fact, Tyler, I'm going to send you an email after the show because I got an idea for a sort of another lockdown short based off a previous conversation we've had, and see if we can put that together. So yeah, Blender. I've been seeing a lot of things on Blender and Unreal Engine in terms of creating these backgrounds for or these environments for people, and I'm pretty excited about those possibilities. But you know, for me, my limitation is I still can't do any of that stuff. So when we create those backgrounds, it's not going to be a me, it's going to be a you. So yeah, but very, very keen to try and have a little play about with that sort of thing, because yeah, I think there's some real interesting possibilities, especially if we're all on lockdown for another few weeks. Could do some fun stuff there.
Well, what's the idea? You can't be speaking, I don't know if this is even correct, obliquely, like to the side,
yeah.
Anyway, speaking, without, for the other 149 other listeners. What's the site? This lockdown movie idea?
The lockdown movie. See, here's the issue. I already did a lockdown movie. It's called Stay at Home, and it's currently being submitted to film festivals. Now, the issue with creating a lockdown movie,
I was in that film. You can say we
weren't
we
in
did
that film ultimately.
No,
but you did appear. You were filmed for that film. But
I contributed.
You did not make the final cut. You did deliver your worst performance ever in a film, and then I edited it together, and it was fine.
To be fair, I was in the depths of depression in the middle of the New Zealand lockdown.
No prep, didn't
the
learn
first
your lines.
One, all by myself, all on my lonesome, with the worst injury I've ever had in my life.
Learn your lines, didn't learn
them. No friends, no romance, very little work, no support network whatsoever, and living in a depressing, shitty little flat. I would wake up every day and I'd just look at the ceiling, and it was this peeling ceiling. It was just sitting there. It was just this depressing, no sunlight, peeling ceiling of this crappy little flat. It was a horrible time, and there was a beautiful little cat that used to come and visit me every morning. She'd come and jump. I'd open my window and then get back into bed, and she'd come and jump through the window and then come and have a little nap with me. This beautiful little cat. And then as soon as we got to level 3, her owners moved away, and that was the final straw. That was the final straw for my mental health.
I'm just going to throw
after that, I had truly nothing.
I'm just going to throw a cool story, bro, but that doesn't excuse not learning your lines.
Well, see, that's the problem, right? Like no sympathy for
Gotta learn your lines. Don't care if you're depressed. Learn those fucking lines.
I'm expected to be a
professional,
immortal and infinite and always professional by definition, guy. is the exchange of services for money. Now, there was no money exchanged or even offered.
I don't think it's really the exchange of money professional. If that were the case, then
this is a
um,
then you wouldn't be a professional.
No one would be a professional, and this for the last extended period of time in their creative pursuits. But yes, I certainly did not pay you for the worst performance of all time. You're back.
It was not the worst performance of all time. It was the worst performance. It was
your
worst performance.
worst.
Still an excellent performance. Just, very just poor compared to my high, the high standard you normally expect from
knowing your lines.
Yeah, well, I do normally know my lines, but as mentioned, the aforementioned crippling depression and lack of support network.
So anyway, the issue is we've already done a kind of we're locked in, stay at home style movie, and we only have the same resources that we did last time. And so the real question but then becomes, okay, well, if that's all we have, I am fixing this video. If that's all we have, then how... I think you need to put yourself on the... yeah, you do need to put yourself on the other side with your camera.
I'm on the same side that I was just on.
Yeah? Okay. Let me fix that then.
Yeah, this is the same side now.
Okay.
But you can just see for the live stream, for the people at home who have no idea what's going on, the live stream is currently just the corner of my bald head. That's all you can see on the live stream. There's technical issues. What happened was my camera, my good camera that I normally use for the show has died. It's not working. And then so I took Guy's camera. Guy lent me one of his cameras. He's got a pile of cameras, and he picked one off the top and gave one to me, and we connected that up. But I think maybe it's gotten too hot, or I'm not sure what the problem is, but it stopped working. I changed batteries.
You've broken another camera.
I've broken all the cameras. Yeah. If you want your camera to last 5 minutes, give it to me. No,
just
for whatever reason, it stopped.
Curiously exploded when I lent it to you.
That tripod spontaneously combusted. It was just exploded. It had nothing to do with me. And so, but for whatever reason, that the battery, I thought it was the battery. The battery didn't fix it. And then so what I've done is I've gone back to my old trusty 1080p C9 220 or C9 22 220, I think it is, webcam.
That explains why you look like shit again.
Yeah, it explains it.
So anyway, the challenge is how do you make a short film?
Yeah,
similar sort of constraints and constructs, and not it just be a rehash.
Yeah,
and Tyler was talking about some of the visual effects work that he's been doing recently, and I was very interested and inspired by that, and trying to frame some of maybe a short around some of his work. And so I'm talking sort of obscurely because I don't want to be like, hey, well, we were going to do this type of film. And then it's like Tyler goes, well, actually, mate, I ain't got time for that shit. So you're not going to do that. So that's why I'm speaking obscurely. But it's like trying to think of a short film that fits within the framework of this bubble that we're in over this flat, and with the characters that we have available to us, which is really 3 people. Me, my girlfriend, and you, and then also be something that's going to be like cool and fun to shoot, that like is cinematically engaging. So I do have kind of an idea based on some of the things that Tyler was talking about, so I just have to work that through. But that's why I'm saying it'd probably be another horror film. I could say that, another horror short, but that's really all the details that we can give at this time.
One good thing about being in isolation when level 4 began was that I skipped a week of level 4.
That's true.
That was very good. It was very, very good. And it was a little bit strange in isolation because when I went into isolation, the staff were really kind of scared of us, the guests, right? We were the ones that potentially had COVID.
Mm.
And we spent a week in there, and the staff would obviously be careful around us. But then the COVID outbreak happened in Auckland, and suddenly the guests were the ones that were scared of the staff because the staff were more likely to have COVID than the guests, or just as likely at least. So, hell of a time to be alive.
It is just, there is a deep level of irony that you've been in lockdown for this extended amount of time and you can't wait to get out into the free world. And then in the time that you're in lockdown, the free world goes into lockdown. And so all you're doing is coming out to the same exact thing that you've been in.
Yeah. Well, but worse, because I used to get 3 meals a day cooked for me, and it was all free. Everything was all paid for, 3 meals a day, and now I've got to cook for myself, like a fucking commoner.
We don't want to, and look, we don't want to belittle anyone's experience in lockdown, right? But the worst part of lockdown is that you cannot get any takeaways from anywhere. You know? It's not the mental health issues. It's not what you talked about with the cat and the peeling paint on the walls and everything and looking up and you had lost all hope. Nothing to do with that.
And the debilitating injury and the lack of
all of that pales in comparison to the fact that you also could not order takeaways. And I really feel that if you could have ordered takeaways, you probably would have been fine. But you couldn't. And that really tipped you over the edge.
Well, it's a contributing factor, I guess. I think it's the coffee, actually. The proper coffee is a contributing factor, you know?
Yeah.
But last episode, you asked me about the possibility of an isolation booty call if I could sneak into the room of another guest in isolation. Now, this is this is insider information, right? I'm always privy to insider information. I've got a way of always knowing this type of stuff. And I actually, in this particular case with this isolation stuff, after you asked me about that, I went and asked an inside source. That inside source is my brother. My brother is a guard for isolation facilities in New Zealand. He's in the military, and one of his duties is to be an isolation guard. He's part of the New Zealand Defence Force.
One of his duties is to police the booty.
He does that. He's the booty. The duty police booty. The booty. Yes, there's definitely something there. But that's one of his duties. And so his duty is to fuck it. Anyway, I text him. And I said, you see what happens? See what happens when I don't have the improv, when I don't have my fucking building blocks? You see? Do you see? If I'm going to write that shit down, and next week I'm gonna have a piece of fucking poetry about booty calls being your duty.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I text my brother right after our conversation, and I said, hey, bro, serious question. Hypothetically speaking, in terms of repercussions, what would happen if a guest in isolation got caught booty calling another guest in isolation, asking for a friend? And he said, you get locked in your room and fined. The police and nurses will also be coming to have a chat to you about that. There's cameras everywhere, so they would catch you. And I was like, well, what do you mean me? I mean, I'm asking for a friend. But I'm going to tell you something. I thought of how you would do it. Here's how you would do it. At least in my hotel, you get 2 keys. Everybody gets 2 keys when you go to a hotel. One that you keep in the little slot by the door, which keeps the electricity on, and one which you take with you when you leave. And that's the one that lets you in and out. So you've got 2 keys, right? So what you would do if you want to do a booty call in isolation, if you're going to be in isolation soon, if there's any of our listeners, the Sifty 150, here's how you would get away with doing a booty call. You and the person you're going to booty call with, you book yourself, you swap 1 card. So you get 2 cards each, right? So you give him or her one card, and he or she gives you one card. Now you've got a card for your room and for their room, and they've got a room for your room and for their room. Then what you do is you book yourself a slot, a smoking slot. Now you can go outside for 20 minutes. If you're a smoker, so every day in isolation, you get one 45-minute walk, and you have to book it beforehand. You have to book it the day before, or you don't get to go for a walk. And so what happens is you book the day before. So you can book your walk, but if you're a smoker, or if you're willing to pretend that you're a smoker, you can also book a 20-minute smoking slot. So here's how I would booty call somebody if I were to do it. I would swap keys with this person during my walk. I would book 2 smoking slots. First smoking slot, I go outside, I stand there for 20 minutes, and then I go back inside. But instead of going back inside and going to my room, I casually go to their room, use their key, bloop, straight in. I'm in the room. That's it. Then I've got my second smoking slot, which is, say, 2 hours later. I then leave the room, go back outside for a smoke, go back in 20 minutes later. I go back inside, go to my room, use my card, bloop, bloop, into my room. So for them to notice that this person, me or hypothetically whoever it is, has booty called somebody, they would have to be watching that it's not like you're going and knocking on someone's door and you're on the wrong floor and shit. They would have to be, you're just walking straight in, and you're just walking, you just come out of one room, go for a smoke. They would need to be watching you from before you go for a smoke to see where this person is coming out. They'd need to be watching the cameras in an eagle-eyed fashion, which I very much doubt they are watching in an eagle-eyed fashion. But they would need to leave. They would need to leave the room. They need to watch you leave the room, and then they'd need to watch you very closely to go, oh, he's going back to the same room, or he's going to a different room. And no alarms would pop up because the card is, you're using the card for that room, So yeah, that is how you would booty call in isolation. Swap cards and then just casually walk in and out between smoke breaks.
I guess the only chink in your armor here, the only issue with this plan is if they track the swipe back in. As in, if you have not swiped back in to get back into your room past, say, 30 minutes past your break, let's say. So you booked in for a 20-minute break. You head out.
Yes.
Now, they're waiting for your swipe back in, and if that swipe is not received after 30 minutes, does the alarm bells ring, so to speak? Or do they have absolutely zero real, look at that, via their security system? It's not that fucking detailed. In which case you're away laughing.
Well, the thing is that you don't swipe out of your room. You only swipe into your room. So yes, I mean, that is the question, is after 30 minutes they go, well, hang on a minute, he had a break at 2 p.m, a smoke break at 2 p.m, it's now 3 p.m, and he hasn't swiped into his room.
And they will have a log of all
I just
of
feel
that,
like,
but whether or not they ever look at it,
it's connected, Yeah, and if it's connected or not. Yeah. Well, I did actually notice that global security at one point was one of the. It was first security, but I'm sure on one day I saw global security was one of the security companies. Now, they were working alongside the New Zealand Defence Force. The New Zealand Defence Force does the hard lifting, the heavy lifting, and global security was kind of just standing around being a bunch of fat dudes and eating pies and so on.
In case anyone's wondering, Global Security is the company that I used to work for for many years. Before my circumstances took a...
Before you decided to go freelance.
Before I decided to become a film entrepreneur. And start peddling my wares, my skill set as a filmmaker. So yeah, look, that doesn't surprise me, because also global security, I'm assuming, so what probably happened there is that global security were called in when their regular client, who normally does the security, first security, they had a couple people sick, and then they couldn't call in a spare person, so they're like, fuck, who's out there? I will call someone from global security, get them to come in and eat a pie.
Yeah.
As long as they're there eating their pie, you know, we know the
Yeah.
place is safe. I tell you what, if global security are
Yeah.
in charge, because the only thing that
I'll be getting away with those booty
you'll be getting
calls.
away with those booty calls. If like the only thing that global security can do well is eat a pie on shift, but in terms of actually any security work, good fucking luck. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that's great. That's a very Ocean's 11-esque thing that you spent some time thinking up there.
Yeah.
So I guess you'll find out in the next time you leave and come back.
Yeah. Well, the problem is let's just say it was on the cards. It was on the cards. All I had to do was be bold and resolute. But I
chose the
cowardly route, and I stayed in my room.
Yeah.
The simpering cowardly approach, and I stayed in my room. But you know, I'm just saying that this was on the cards. This was on the cards. Now I got some a devastating social media development. Would you like to hear it?
Yep.
I used to be a top fan of what's known as of a news website called News Hub. News Hub, on Facebook, I had the top fan badge, which you can proudly display whenever you comment. Now, I have been banned from commenting on News Hub articles.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
I have been banned. I've been banned from commenting. Not only, I mean, obviously it got deleted, but I have been banned. Now, look, it was probably a little bit in poor taste. The comment was a little bit in poor taste.
Yeah.
But I mean, how the mighty have fallen.
From a top fan to banned.
Banned. Yes. So, no, I'll publicly apologize. No, so what happened was a very tragic story. A baby was found dead, discarded in a recycling facility. And this was a real, this was real talk. This was real life. There was a dead baby that was found in a recycling facility that had been discarded. And the police were very interested to talk to the mother because they were worried about her health. And obviously there's probably some legal repercussions. And I commented that I hope they find her because that's definitely not recyclable. And I was almost immediately banned and blocked.
Yes.
And and I am now no longer able to comment on the News Hub Facebook, anything on there. So if anybody from News Hub is listening, just do me a solid and unblock me.
Not surprising. Not surprising. Yeah, too soon.
But to be fair,
too soon.
It was the day it happened. I'm hot. It's a fresh take. I'm a edgy hip dude. And I am from the Wellington City Rubbish Police.
Absolutely appalling.
Well, that is what Topper Gun would say. To be fair, my character Topper Gun from Wellington City Rubbish Police, that's what he would say.
But that's not what a good person would say.
Well, that's all right. Definitely not a good person.
Yeah. So I can see why that happened. Well, look, I'm just going to share one more little COVID story today. We were accosted by the postman. And we've post haste NZ, I'm calling you out because we've discovered a problem with your service. Now, you're actually not able to easily send things in level 4 lockdown, but some businesses are still able to use courier services to deliver items. So there are things what are called essential goods, which you can still have delivered in this lockdown time. So if you have an essential good that you desperately need, you can order it online and it can still be delivered to you. And in this instance, one of these essential goods was ordered by my girlfriend. Now, it's meant to be contactless delivery. So contactless delivery, it's all in the name, right? You don't make contact with a person. It's contactless delivery. So today, in the afternoon, my girlfriend heard a loud knock on the door. She got up and saw that it was the postman or a courier person from Post Haste, New Zealand. And she was like, all right, thank you. He knocked on the door again. She was like, yes, thank you very much. He knocked on the door again. She was like, oh, fuck's sake. So she was forced to open the door, which again is not something that is necessary to do in contactless delivery. The postman in person was like, oh, are you Tisha? And she was like, yes. And he's like, here's your package. As he sprayed spittle towards her. And essentially, he had no mask on, no sort of gloves on, adhering to none of the rules of lockdown, and he's a fucking courier. So if you can imagine that either A, he has COVID, or someone he visits has COVID, which is hundreds of sites per day, this man, because he's not following any lockdown regulations, is essentially spreading COVID far and wide. And it just absolutely makes no sense. I mean, at least do the mask thing. But it's also contactless. His job is easier now. He doesn't need a signature. He doesn't need verification. He literally just has to knock on the door and walk away. That's all he has to do. He doesn't need someone to open the door. And so anyway, my girlfriend was like, okay, I'm going to make a complaint about this. And she rung up Post Haste, helpline. And they're like, yes! What? What do you want? Busy! We're busy! And she was like, hey, look, I just wanted to flag this issue with one of your couriers because this is actually a real safety problem if he's doing this everywhere. He's, not adhering to sort of level 4 lockdown, but he's also potentially a fucking super spreader. And they were like, yeah, okay, we'll take it up with the fleet manager. And she was like, okay, do you want my details? All right, what address was this? And like they had just been seriously inconvenienced by this super spreader warning call about one of their fucking ignorant workers. I mean, really, it's not that hard. Just put a mask on. Save some time.
The mask should definitely
make
be
your
on.
job easier. Don't wait for any doors to be opened. You're fucking fine.
Well, we've been in lockdown for a week. Plus, we've had this before. This is not our first fucking rodeo. Like, that's what contactless is.
Exactly.
And also
you
with
don't
the
make
Delta.
contact. So he's going around making contact with every single person on his courier run and breathing all over them and vice versa.
Yeah.
It's insanity.
The thing is, with this Delta variant, there's been talk of people catching it in isolation facilities merely from having the door open in a hotel when somebody else has the door open in the hotel at the same time. And so if this guy is walking around, every time you open a door, there's a certain amount of air displacement. Air gets displaced, right? Air comes in, air goes out. All blows all over each other. And so it makes perfect sense if you think about it. So, yeah.
What are you doing, Post Haste New Zealand? Sort your shit out.
Sort it out, Post Haste.
Sort it out. I just couldn't get over the blasé attitude of the call center. Like, shit. One of our couriers is really fucking up here. We better really get on that quick. Instead, it's like, I'll talk to the fleet manager. Well, you don't have any of my details. Could I speak to the manager? I'll put you on hold. She puts the hold for 6 seconds. I'm sorry, the manager isn't available now. Oh, what a fucking genius. Okay, really? Not available. Fucker. So
Yeah.
anyway, Post Haste New Zealand is in the shit house for me. I'm
Yeah.
gonna we're reporting them.
Mm.
Police report has been filed.
Mm.
Serious
Well,
shit.
good. You got to take it seriously. I mean, this is a literal global pandemic.
Well, it's just
This ain't a fucking
It's just
joke.
crazy that it's just like, look, I get it if maybe you're not paying attention to anything, but the people that need to be briefed, right? The people that need to be most aware of the precautions they need to put in place are the people that are still working and in still contact with everyone, and that's couriers. So, anyway. Post Haste, I
Well,
don't recommend Post Haste New Zealand as a service in level 4 lockdown.
No. I'm despite going from complete isolation into level 4 lockdown, I am very, glad to be out. It's not really that much freer, but it is obviously definitely freer than being just in the same hotel room day in and day out. And so, yes, it's very lucky that I got out of isolation when I did. Otherwise, I was likely to start smearing feces all over the walls.
Well, they say it's the last 4 days. Was it the last 4 days that really got to you? Is that when the feces started appearing, or what?
Oh, no. It wasn't because of isolation insanity. That's just what I like to do in a new place. After a couple of weeks in a new place, I like to smear feces on the wall. And so it had been about 14 days. So I was kind of getting the urge to start smearing feces on the wall. Yeah, I haven't actually, in this house that I'm in at the moment, I spent 4 days here before going to Japan. And then I've been back for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 days or something like that. So in about 10 days, I'm going to smear feces on the wall here in my room.
I'm grateful that we don't flat together.
Yeah, because that was always yours. It was always a pet peeve of yours when I would smear feces on the wall of the flat down the hallway. Just one long line down the hallway.
Yeah, I was not a fan. I was not a fan. Well, that sort of concludes. Well, I think maybe we should wrap it up.
Okay.
Because it's getting late. I want to have my dinner. And
yep.
I'm busy on lockdown.
Me too. I got to get cooking. Hey, I'm busy too, man. I got shit to do. This lockdown is fucking up a lot of my work. It's making my work a lot harder because I've got to change a lot of stuff that had been planned for months in advance, and then it's got to get changed because of COVID. And it's really rather annoying.
I mean, what's interesting though is, as we recall last lockdown, if you flash back to those episodes, you went for a steadily employed man to someone with absolutely no jobs. That hasn't been the case this lockdown.
Yeah. That's not true. I still had jobs last time. So I worked for a film festival, and that was the only job I still had.
You were blatantly
was
exaggerating
film festival
last
work.
time.
Well, no. I mean, like, I went from being a very busy person who comes and goes from the house regularly and has places to be and people to see and things to do, to being somebody who has one job, which is like just one of the 10 jobs that I have. I had one job left.
You had one job, Harley.
Yeah. And it went great. I had one job and it went awesome. It was a resounding success. All of the events I was running for the film festival went fine, and it was a resounding success despite the crippling depression, lack of cat, peeling paint on the roof, lack of support network, lack of exercise, and the worst injury I've ever had in my life, which I had to recover from completely on my own.
DDP yoga, you didn't do it, did you?
No,
I gave
I did
you
not
the solution,
do DDP yoga.
Wrapped in a bow. You did not accept that.
Your solution was, hey, Harley, there's an online course. You don't need actual human connection.
Exactly.
Here's an online course. Yeah.
Well, my solution was, we're all online. Here's the course that'll fix you back. Nah, I'd rather wallow in pain and misery, thanks.
Well, I feel like we had different experiences of that last lockdown because yours, while very still stressful because you had work and all of that stuff, you had a girlfriend and 2 dogs and a big house.
Yeah.
Well, not really that big, but big
Well,
enough.
let's not forget,
Whereas
girlfriends
I had
can be
this.
very stressful.
Well, it's true that the girlfriends are a double-edged sword.
They sure are.
There's no doubt
They
about
sure
it.
are.
There's no doubt about it.
And when
There's
you,
the positives
I
and the
was going to
negatives.
say, when you say double-edged, both sides are sharp, and they will cut you.
Yes.
There's no way that you
No, it's
cannot
true.
handle that sword without getting severe injuries, and that's a girlfriend.
and you're trapped in this house
with a double-edged sword.
with this dangerous blade.
No way to handle it safely.
Yeah. But at least you had the dogs. You had dogs as well.
Did have the dogs.
Yeah. Man's best friend.
Yeah.
Guy's best friend. Okay, well, look, on that note, we'll get the fuck out of here. Facebook.com/Guy and Harley. Please go and support us. Patreon.com/Pigville. That would really support us. You give us $1 a month. That supports the show. You can also buy, if you're on the live stream, check it out, a filthy 50 podcast t-shirt where you do have merchandise, and I'll share that on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Guy and Harley. There's also, what's another good one, Guy? youtube.com/Pigville and the number 2. That's a good one. Go watch our videos because we get paid for that. Channel is monetized. Also, wherever you're watching, please hit thumbs up. Please hit like. Please give us a review. If you're listening on iTunes, give us a review. If you're wherever you are, just make sure you support us because that all makes a big difference to us. And please come and tune in next week as well because we love you guys.
Lots more stuff in the pipeline. Where are we at next week of lockdown? The lockdown files.
What are
we doing?
What's going to change between now and next week? Well, next week the show will be in person, I assume.
There's certainly a high chance that it will be in person, yeah.
Because, we won't have to separate our bubbles.
The bubbles will be conjoined bubbles.
Yeah. Yes. All right, well, on conjoined bubbles, make sure you don't hit stop too soon, Guy, because it cuts out the end. Thank you very much. Good night.
See you later.